G'day folks, and welcome to this tier ranking of the top 200 odd war games as classified and as ranked by users on BoardGameGeek. So I'm using BoardGameGeek data here for both the classifications of these games as war games and for the ranking of these games using the BoardGameGeek ranking system. Let me explain sort of some background and context to how I'm using these systems. So first of all, if you go to a board game, any board game on BoardGameGeek, you'll see on the right-hand side, there's some classification information. Games are classified by type, by category, by mechanisms, by family, and sometimes by re-implementations. It's this top type here, which I'm using here. This is how games are grouped. So we can go to abstract strategy games and get information and forums and images on all games grouped by that type. This is based on the polling of users. So you can come, if you're a user on BoardGameGeek, you can go to this classification, click on the poll, and click on which of the following categories best characterizes these games. Now, I think War of the Ring is best characterized as a thematic game with an emphasis on narrative. And if we see the results, 54% of people agree with that, with 157 votes. 12% say it's a strategy game. 32% say it's best described as a war game. Games these days, they're cross-genre, they're creative, and War of the Ring is a great example of that. I think that's why it's such a popular game, because there's a strong narrative, there's a bit of strategy element, there's a war going on in the background, or the foreground, depending on how you play. So based on these votes, games will be listed with these classifications. I don't know if they use the top two or if it's based on percentage. I don't know how that works exactly, but basically war games, because it's the second most popular classification, is listed as the type of game. The same for pretty much any other game on this list. I can click on, if I click on whatever this game is, click on classifications. 7 people say this is a war game, so it goes into the war game classification. Now, I can, on any game page, click on this classification to go to the war games sort of type, the subdomain forums for this. There are forums where discussions are held, linked forums to all the games of that type, linked items. Now this shows the roughly 11,690 games classified by that type. I can sort these by anything I want. Ranking is what I'm looking for here. So by sorting by rank, it lists games in ranking from best to lowest. War of the Ring, 2nd edition, is the highest ranked war game. Twilight Struggle, 2nd most, and so forth. Now, I'm not going to debate in this video whether or not a game should be classified as a war game. There's a lot that I would certainly disagree with, but I'm just going by the BoardGameGeek polling and classification type. It's the easiest and sort of most objective way to create this kind of list. There have been many discussions about whether or not Root is a war game, whether or not Twilight Struggle is a war game, whether or not War of the Ring is a war game, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into those debates. This is the list I'm using, and these are the rankings I'm using. So what I've actually done is I've gone through the first 23 pages to look at the top 230 games, and I've saved the images for the games that I feel confident ranking. Anything that I haven't played sufficiently or enough or at all, I have omitted. I've also, as usual, omitted re-releases. So I haven't included the first edition of War of the Ring. There's 2 editions of War of the Ring. I don't think I included the first edition. So yeah, we're just looking at the 1 edition, no expansions for these games either. All right, with that rather long caveat out of the way, let's get started. And the first game on our tier is War of the Ring, straight into the S tier. I have discussed this in my comparison video where I compared War of the Ring and Battle of the Five Armies. I actually think Battle of the Five Armies is a better game. But War of the Ring, I mean, just because Battle of the Five Armies is better, it doesn't sort of, they are both outstanding games and should be staples in sort of a robust gaming collection, because this is a fantastic gaming experience. I mentioned in the last video that I've just been teaching my kids how to play it. They've both beaten me. War of the Ring kind of is more prone to these kind of wild swings of luck, compared to Battle of the Five Armies, which is why I prefer Battle of the Five Armies, but War of the Ring has a stronger narrative element to it. It is a very special game, and it's going straight into the S tier. I might jump ahead because I can see Battle of the Five Armies here, S plus tier, because yeah, I think it's slightly better than War of the Ring. It's a more interesting game, and it feels like you have more control over the course of the game. There's much more fighting and more sort of tactical elements. Without that strong narrative story, there is a bit of a story there, but it's the fighting and the tactical elements are more in the forefront of your thinking when you're playing Battle of the Five Armies, and it just feels like you have more control over the outcome of the game compared to the War of the Ring. So yeah, S plus tier for me. Back to the order, and I'm going to put Paths of Glory straight into the S tier. If there was an S plus tier, I mean, this is my favourite game. I think it's the best game of all time. I think it's the best game design of all time. It is amazing. Having played this hundreds of times, it's amazing how well balanced this is. It's amazing how it retains attention. Look, I've discussed Paths of Glory many times, including a bit of at length in the last video, so I won't go on, but yeah, S tier for me, and a fantastic game design. Okay, Pax Romana. I am going to try and be consistent. Last week I put this in the B tier. I think it's fair to put that in the B tier of top 200 games of all time. Yeah, solid game, not outstanding, somewhat dated, but still I think very much playable. Lots of different scenarios, campaigns within this one title. Really nice thematic rules, a lot of optional rules, so a lot of versatility, replayability within that one box. Yeah, solid B tier. Battle Lore. Battle Lore was inspired by Commands and Colours. Now, I don't think this was published by GMT Games. This is published by someone else. I kind of want to say Days of Wonder. Or Fantasy Flight Games, perhaps. So it uses that Command and Colours system, and it introduces magic. And I loved this when it first came out, and I bought it, and I just couldn't find, well, my wife wasn't interested in playing it, and it just sat on the shelf unplayed. But yeah, if you've got a regular opponent, Battle Lore is, yeah, it's Commands and Colours or Memoir 44 with magic spells. And that was a really cool mechanism to weave in. There's since been a second, maybe even a third edition, so it's been revised over the years. I didn't play enough of the second edition, but I did play some actually, but not much. But yeah, solid B tier game. Okay, Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, a game that I have had a love-hate relationship over the years. When I first started playing it, I was fascinated by it. Well, I'm going to shortcut. It's going A tier, almost S tier. And then I hated this sort of what felt like the wild swings of luck. And I felt like, oh, if my opponent drew a good card, they'd win the game. I felt the combat system, could easily wipe out my armies, and I'd lose my entire army. And it was really frustrating, and I really hated the game for a while. But I kept playing it, and over the course of my roughly 150, probably 200 games of Hannibal, I really developed a deep appreciation for it. And I began to realize that luck, which can be really devastating when you lose your entire army or when you lose an entire province, the vast bulk of that can be mitigated. You can't sort of you can't mitigate a poor hand, but you can work around it. And I found that games are rarely decided by bad luck. Usually the better player wins. And having played many games on Wargame Room, I think that's reinforced by experience. When I was young and inexperienced and learning Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, I lost a lot to better players, and I blamed luck. Now that I've played 150, 200 games, I rarely lose. I'm very good at Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, because I know how to mitigate that luck. I know what to do to address that luck. And it's hard to see that as an inexperienced player. You only begin to know the deck, know how to mitigate the bad luck, and control the situation as an experienced player. So for me, very solid game, A tier. And whilst I'm here, let me quickly try and find Hannibal the second edition by Phalanx Games, I think, which takes Hannibal and adds another game to it. Adds miniatures, which is really cool, makes it better, I think. And the Hamilcar variant, which we have played, is just another little twist on Hannibal, which is, we've played it a couple of times. It doesn't stand out as particularly special, but the fact that you're getting 2 games in one is pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to group Maria and Friedrich together. Here's Maria, which I think is a 3-player version. Here's Friedrich, which is the 4-player game. They're different titles, using the same kind of fundamental mechanics of point-to-point movement over a map, and card-driven, card-facilitated sort of actions and combat. It's been a while since I've played both of these, but I really love them. I no longer own them because I used to own both of them, sold them off for the same reason. They just weren't, I never could get them to the table. I played a few games online, but could not get friends to sit down and play this. Held them onto them for years and years and years, and as is my custom, if a game sits there on the shelf unplayed for that long, I kind of regret selling it because they are solid games and they're kind of hard to get nowadays. But sold them on reluctantly, regrettably. Okay, here I stand, and again I discussed this at length yesterday. It's going in the B tier for me, a game that used to love. It used to be a 10 out of 10. It used to be one of my favourite games, but I really soured on it. A game that I don't feel you can mitigate the bad luck. A game that if you're playing as a Pope, which I often do, you feel completely helpless when you're dealt a bad hand. There is nothing you can do. And because you're only dealt over the course of a tournament game, for example, you might only get 12 cards. There's not enough time to mitigate that bad luck, which I found really frustrating. And so the game is really soured as I've seen and experienced that horrific luck. All right, so that's there. Is Virgin Queen here? Yes, she is. It goes alongside it as well. Similar reasons. ASL. Okay, so this is really going to upset people because it's not a top tier game for me. I'm going to put a B. Oh, look, I'm almost going to put an A tier. I have limited experience with ASL, very limited experience, but I recognise its potential. If I had a whole life to dedicate to gaming and didn't have to work or play any other games, I would be likely to dive into ASL. I also have that acknowledged bias against tactical games. I don't really like tactical games that much, but I think ASL is a type of game with its depth and complexity that I could enjoy if I dived into it. So recognizing that potential, I'm putting it B tier. I recognize the outstanding game design. It's not something that I've had the time to explore in depth. I have no ASL titles at the moment. I do have ASL starter kit here too, which I'll throw in there alongside it at B. I used to own the ASL starter kit. B tier, solid games. It's not going higher probably because of my bias against tactical games. It's not going lower because I recognise its potential and solid design. Next up is A Few Acres of Snow. Mark Wallace design based on the 7 Years' War. I mentioned this sort of yesterday in the context of a Wilderness War, which is somewhere on this list, I'm sure. A Few Acres of Snow, I'm putting B tier. Now I know, okay, so this came out and was hugely popular. People love the idea that this is a deck building game, 2-player, and you're fighting the 7 Years' War in North America, French and Indian War, over the course of an hour or two. And I thought it was a brilliant game design. And then people discovered the Halifax Hammer, this way of breaking the game, which I think made it impossible for the English to lose. And it kind of just ruined the game for so many people, including myself. I never played the Halifax Hammer, but the fact that I was aware of it and knew that there's this break in the game just kind of like discouraged me from ever playing the game again. And shortly after that, I stopped playing it. Which is really kind of a shame because I wish I never knew about the Halifax Hammer. I wish that was never discovered because I was getting a lot of enjoyment from this game. My wife played this game. Good to introduce new friends. It was a really easy game to pick up and learn. And just the fact that the game was broken kind of made me not want to play it, which is kind of sad. Commands and Colors, Napoleonics, brilliant. I mentioned this yesterday. Inspired by Commands and Colors, which is in fact, I think, I mentioned yesterday that I think Commands and Colors was the first game to use the system. In fact, I think it was Battle Cry. I think Battle Cry may have been the first, which is here. I'll bring this up next. So it wasn't Commands and Colors. I think what did it do? It really popularized the system, but I think Battle Cry was really the first to use it. I could be wrong there. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Commands and Colors, Napoleonics, adds so much more Napoleonic flavor to this system. It's a lot of fun. It does feel very different to, the unique rules are enough. The leaders and all this kind of stuff are unique to give it that unique Napoleonic flavor, and it's a lot of fun to play. I did find Battle Law. This is the first edition, so that's second edition there, first edition on the right. So yeah, BT there. Battle Cry. Okay, so I know this was the first game to use the system, but it's going in C tier just because it's probably the most bland and unthematic of all these systems. I'm not a huge fan of Battle Cry. There's not too many unique particular rules to go with it. And in fact, if I can see Memoir 44 here, I know Memoir 44 is somewhere. There's so many images to look through. Spoiler alert, when I can find Memoir 44, it's also going alongside it in the C tier for the same reason. I know the expansions add flavor to Memoir 44. Maybe it's not here. Oh, look, we'll get to it when I get to it. But yeah, I find the same concerns with Memoir 44. There's just not enough flavor. I know you've got the terrain features and the maps look great, but not as good as Napoleonics, Battle Law, or Commands and Colors. All right, Fire in the Lake. I discussed this at length yesterday. One of my favorite coin games, straight into the A tier. I won't explain any more about that because I did discuss it at length yesterday. Twilight Struggle. Yeah, another game alongside Command and Colors Ancients that kind of got me into out of Eurogames and into kind of Wargames. I know it's been debated whether or not this is a Wargame. I'm putting this in the B tier. I'm trying to see where I ranked this yesterday. Did I rank Twilight Struggle? Yeah, I did. I ranked it B tier yesterday. Solid game design. Used to be #1 board game. I've played it hundreds of times. Probably easily 200 times, I think. Probably easily. That's a contradiction. But one of the reasons it's not higher is just because I've played it so many times and I'm kind of sick of it. I recognise outstanding game design, but yeah. Labyrinth, very similar game that I haven't played as much as I would like to. It's going B tier. Imperial Struggle, and I discussed this at length yesterday. It is A tier. It's better than Labyrinth. It's better than Twilight Struggle. It's an amazing game experience, which is unique. A very different feel to Twilight Struggle and difficult to compare. Space Empires 4X, I discussed yesterday how it's difficult to get to the table. I liked it, friends didn't. It's quite long for what it is, and I think there are better 4X space games. There are there are more and better space 4X games. Eclipse, Twilight Imperium. What else do we play? Eclipse, Twilight Imperium. I'd even play Twilight Inscription before I'd play Space Empires 4X again, but I did like it. Good, solid game. I had fun. My friends didn't, but I said I'd play it again, and they said they wouldn't. So there we go. Nexus Ops. I bought this game. This is the revised edition box cover, but I bought this game for $20 years ago, and it is so easy to get to the table. It's a very easy game to teach. It flows very smoothly. It's always a fun game, fighting for the monolith. It's almost like Twilight Imperium crammed within an hour. So if you like Twilight Imperium or Eclipse or Space Empires 4X, but you want that experience within sort of an hour, grab Nexus Ops. It is it's a great gaming experience that is easy to play, easy to teach people, and there's lots of fighting, all playing very quickly within about an hour of gameplay. Why is it C tier? Because it's nothing special. It's sound, but I think every game in this tier is a better design. It's It does, one of my friends said, this is just a rip-off of Twilight Imperium, which it kind of is, simplified. So nothing particularly special or innovative about Nexus Assault, but a great game that I recommend. Great game, CT. Contradiction. All right, Triumph and Tragedy. I discussed yesterday how it just fell flat with that group. Block game, Second World War, multiplayer, anxiety, nothing happening. I know a lot of people disagree. I know a lot of people love that game. I very much respect those opinions. And, it came down to our experience. It wasn't great. Doesn't mean it's a bad game, just that not for our group, not for our particular gaming tastes. Now, noting as well my bias against block games. I do have this bias against block games. I tend not to like block games, but here's Hammer of the Scots, A tier. Because it is, alongside Sekigahara, which should be in the list somewhere, one of the best block games here is Sekigahara, straight to A tier. Those two are two of the best block games available. Hammer of the Scots is really fascinating. William Longshanks. It's got William Wallace, William Longshanks. Look, all the nobles in Scotland. It just. There are other block games here. So Julius Caesar by Columbia Games, Napoleon's Waterloo campaign. Here it is. They don't rank quite as high as Hammer of the Scots. Napoleon's Waterloo campaign, I'm putting C tier. I'm just grabbing that out and throwing it up there before I forget about it. It doesn't feel historical. It doesn't feel thematic. You're moving blocks around the map. Hammer of the Scots kind of retains a somewhat historical. I know they're all light games, light block war games, not meant to be complicated, not meant to be too historically accurate, but I feel like Hammer of the Scots recreates the feeling. I don't think Napoleon does that. And I don't think Julius Caesar, where is Julius Caesar, does that too well either. So they're both going C tier, but Hammer of the Scots and Sekigahara are A tier. Sekigahara more for gameplay, very different type of game, not Columbia Games, GMT. Hammer of the Scots for that feeling. So different reasons for putting them up higher or lower. Cuba Libre is going B tier. A solid, the first coin game, probably one of the easiest to play. Solid, good to introduce new gamers to the coin system with. Okay, this is a Game of Thrones board game. And what can I say about this? It's, great fun with friends who can read the rules or who know how to play. Very difficult to get to the table. It's quite a long game, goes for many hours. You've got sort of hidden orders. Everyone puts their orders on the table. You flip them over. It kind of has a bit of a rock, paper, scissors hidden element to it. But, you're building armies, you're building your fleets, you're having fun, fighting on this Game of Westeros. If you're Game of Thrones fans, this is kind of a war game, strategy game. Imagine Risk in the Westeros world. Yeah, quite interesting. Churchill, I mentioned yesterday, solid BT game. Wish we could play it more, just hard to get to the table. Root, I love. Not going to debate whether or not it's a war game. It's certainly a conflict-based game, asymmetrical player powers, lots of expansions to add new factions and powers. It's always a fascinating game to play. It's always fun. It's always interesting. It's always a different game. So a lot of replayability, and it's always a great experience. I've never played a bad, boring game of Root. It's always interesting. D-Day at Omaha Beach is going S tier. Look, a classic. I used to rate it higher than I do at the moment. It's kind of soured in recent years. I do like... So the game is basically divided into two halves. The first half, you invade Omaha Beach and you fight to get off the beach and through the draws. Once you get past the draws, you fight on sort of land, and that's where the game kind of bogs down. There's a lot of maintenance of German movement, which I don't enjoy as much. And I almost just want to play through the first 8 turns of D-Day at Omaha Beach and then kind of stop. The kind of the early scenarios are kind of the most fun, and then it gets a bit more difficult and drier and mechanical as you move up over the bluffs and so forth. This game here is Wallenstein, and it's the predecessor to Dirk Henn's Shogun. Now, Shogun, I don't think, made the top 200, but Wallenstein did, which is interesting, because I think Shogun's a better game, I think. Wallenstein's a really fun game. Basically, it's been a while, you have a hand of cards with territories, and you'll give each territory an action. So it's almost like Westeros, it's almost like Game of Thrones, the board game in that sense. But your opponents don't know what you're doing. So you might be recruiting in certain territories, you might be moving armies out of other territories. That kind of mechanic, you all kind of reveal at the same time and take steps, step by step, perform the action of that territory. Wallenstein is, of course, is it the 30 Years' War? Correct me if I'm wrong there. And kind of, Wallenstein as this power broker in the 30 Years' War. Shogun focused on Sendoku Jidai period in Japan. Both themes work really well. Wallenstein is probably a more balanced because the map is quite circular and everyone kind of has an even chance, whereas Shogun uses a map of Japan, and if you're at sort of the far north or the far south, you have an advantage over people who are kind of scattered. Yeah, what's distinct about these games is, of course, the cube tower. So when you fight a battle, you grab all your cubes from your area and all your opponent's cubes, and you throw them in the tower, and cubes will come out the bottom to determine who wins or loses. And some of your cubes might be locked in the tower, and your opponent's cubes may come flooding out, and they win the battle. So it's a really interesting, random, chaotic, but fun way to resolve combat. A lot of people are frustrated with that cube tower. I think it's too random, chaotic, and frustrating, but it was always nice and fun to throw the cubes into the tower. Empire of the Sun, I discussed this again, GMT Games, B tier, want to play it more, probably should be higher because it's an outstanding game design that I just don't have an opponent to dive into it with. Very big, complex game, hard to teach somebody because of that complexity. Yeah. Space Hulk. This is the box cover for, I think, might be first edition Space Hulk. Look, B tier, solid. What can I say about Space Hulk? It's tactical. You're a Space Marine Terminator squad fighting off against Gene Stealers on a Space Hulk. You've got blips popping around the ship. It's very thematic. It's a lot of fun. It can be really tough, and a good thematic experience. Yeah, it's solid B tier. Is it a war game? I'm not going to discuss that. Okay, 1989. Another solid B tier game. I mentioned this yesterday. It's like Twilight Struggle, focusing on the fall of communism, fall of the Berlin Wall, collapse of Soviet communist governments, etc. Solid B tier. Combat Commander Pacific, I've mentioned yesterday. I'm not a fan of this series. I've tried to like it. I've tried to play it many times, and every time I come back to it, I just don't enjoy it all that much. So D tier for me. Conflict of Heroes, unfortunately, it's the same. Another game, again, this is my bias against tactical games. I just don't enjoy them. I'm sorry, a lot of people are going to hate this. I recognise that they're good games. I know I've got Squad Leader up here. But these kind of slightly lighter, medium weight tactical games just don't gel with me. X-Wing, Star Wars X-Wing. This might also upset a lot of people. I'm putting this C tier. Have played it, used to play it quite a lot, first edition in particular. I don't think I played second edition, which is why I didn't include the image here. I just don't think it's all that special. It basically takes the Wings of War system, which I'm putting D tier, improves it slightly. I'm not a fan of Wings of War. You're moving the aircraft around, and there's a lot of Wings of War series and expansions and variants, but I've never really liked any of them. You're flying aircraft around, you plot your movement out, tactically move around. I don't know, the tactical games don't really grab me. And these are both kind of tactical fighting games. Very similar, X-Wing and Wings of War, neither of which I enjoy that much. I think X-Wing is slightly better because it has a little bit more detail and variability. You can just do more in X-Wing compared to Wings of War. Okay, this is is this Bonaparte Marengo or is this Napoleon's Triumph? This is Napoleon's Triumph. S tier for me. If I can find Bonaparte Marengo, it is also S tier because these are two amazing games. If you have never played these games, where's the other one? It's here somewhere. I'll find it later. Bonaparte Marengo and Napoleon's Triumph are two outstanding games by Rachel Simmons. Incredibly unique gaming experiences. Simmons designed Napoleon's Triumph, Bonaparte Marengo, and Guns of Gettysburg. I'll talk about this in just a moment. The first two, Napoleon's Triumph and Bonaparte Marengo, really evoke. I've wrote a written review where I said no other, unsurpassed in their ability to capture kind of the aesthetics of looking over a battlefield and seeing those armies move around. It's brilliant. It looks beautiful, quite complex to play and learn, and very difficult to return to the table because every time we come back to play this, we have to relearn it, and it's a struggle, and we feel like we've forgotten everything from the past. But that's kind of our fault, not the game's. It really is an amazing two experiences. That said, I didn't like Guns of Gettysburg. It didn't capture Gettysburg. I'm putting this C tier, which may again come as quite a shock because I've just raved about Napoleon's Triumph and Bonaparte Marengo is really capturing the feeling. I don't think Gettysburg was the third title in the series, and it didn't capture it for me. It created, it never quite recreated the historical situation. I mentioned yesterday how 3 days of Gettysburg, just by the timing of reinforcements and the construction of the development of the rules and the map and the units, facilitates a close alignment with historical events. Guns of Gettysburg doesn't do that. Good game, sure, but compared to Napoleon's Triumph and Bonaparte Marengo, which I felt evoked that historical feel, Guns of Gettysburg didn't. It didn't feel like Gettysburg. It felt like a good little block game, but not Gettysburg. So C tier for me. Triumph, Time of Crisis. I mentioned yesterday how I don't like this. Friends love it. I don't like how this is scripted opening, that you kind of really need, your first 4 turns are critical. If you get behind, you're behind for the rest of the game. I'm probably exaggerating there, but that's what it always feels like when we play. Whoever's played most recently remembers how to play the game, and scripts are opening. History of the World. I have played this game a lot. It is a very lightweight history of thousands of years of human history. It's a light. What my pros and cons. This is a light game. It's random and chaotic, and every turn, you're drawing a civilization, and you're Chola, or you are the Roman Empire. Problem is, what faction you draw creates huge swings in your strength, basically. So you can go from dead last, suddenly you're drawing the Roman Empire, and you're first. On the last turn in particular, if you draw, I think, is it the British Empire, who is just so powerful. And it's quite a long game. For a relatively light, easy game, it goes for a long time. So for me, it's D tier, just because it's lightweight, and chaotic and random, but also really long and a huge investment of time for a game that you just kind of almost feel like a passenger. You don't have a lot of agency. You get your faction, and often there's not much you can do. Yeah, so D tier for me, just because the imbalance between time versus lack of agency and control and chaos. Okay, Falling Sky. I think this is a solid B tier. I think I said the same thing yesterday. I hope I said the same. I hope I'm being consistent. So yeah, solid BT, great coin game, easy to learn, great to teach new players. Polis, Fight for the Hegemony. This is the first edition box cover. This is the edition that I have. This is a solid game on Spartan and Athenian fight for hegemony in the Aegean. What more can I say about it? Yeah, always an interesting experience, fun to play, relatively lightweight, easy to play and learn, kind of war game. Again, not going to debate whether or not it's a war game. Solid, nothing spectacular about it, nothing too bad about it, right in the middle there. A Distant Plane, another solid B-tier coin game. I won't take too much about that. Wilderness War. Where did I put A Few Acres of Snow? So I'll put it alongside A Few Acres of Snow. Yeah, a card-driven game on the 7 Years' War in North America. Tide of Iron. This is a tough one. Nothing. I think this is better than Memoir 44. So where is Memoir 44? Can anyone see it anywhere? You're probably staring at it and going, there it is, there it is. I think it's better than Memoir 44. If you like Memoir 44, you will love Tide of Iron. I can't see any reason why, if you're a fan of that system in Memoir 44, I can't understand why you wouldn't prefer Tide of Iron more. Maybe if you don't, look, it's only a slight step up in complexity for a much better gaming experience. I say I don't like tactical games, but here's a great example of a tactical game done well, where it's moderate complexity rules, really evocative feel, great use of miniatures, great scenarios, a lot of fun. Almost 80, I'd say. So I'd say this is like a B+ here for me. Axis and Allies, so solid, has really aged, and I don't know if I'll ever play it again, but I have played this probably hundreds of times over the years. Used to play a lot online. I was addicted to it. I used to play a lot online and loved it. That's how I got the hundreds of games out of the way. Just a solid. I think it's really dated. I can't even imagine introducing my son to it anymore. Once you get to a certain level of experience, it becomes quite scripted. You play against sort of really good experienced players online, and there are scripted openings that really become very luck dependent. If you're just playing with friends, great, have fun, but yeah, I guess I've played it so much that it becomes a bit repetitive after a while. Undaunted. This is another one that's going to upset a lot of people, because I know people love this game, and it is way up there. It is number 5, 5th highest ranked war game. I'm putting it in the C tier. It's light. It's sort of a deck building war game, a card facilitated kind of thing. But for me, it just never quite. It's interesting to see. I love the innovation, and I want to try Undaunted Stalingrad because I've heard so many great things about it, but I just didn't enjoy it that much. Combination of the abstraction of the battlefield, the abstraction of units, the deck building mechanic used for a tactical game, and the fact that it's a tactical game, which I've said I'm not usually a huge fan of, just means that it's below standard for me. That said, if anyone asked me, if a friend came up and said, "Oh, should I try Undaunted?" I'd say yes, go ahead. If they were a new gamer or somebody interested in getting into wargame, I would recommend this to most people, even experienced wargamers. Should I try Undaunted? Yeah, give it a go. I've got a friend, in fact, who asked about Stalingrad. I said I'd be really keen to play it with you because I've heard that's a really great evolution of the system. It's just I personally, for those reasons that I've mentioned, don't rate it very highly. That's interesting how I can recommend a game to most other people but not like it myself. Yeah, again, this shows just how subjective and chaotic this system is. I know the vast majority of people would put this at least at B. Yep, not me. Ambush. John Butterfield, I think he's brilliant. A lot of people love Ambush as well. I played a lot of Ambush. I've actually owned Ambush on 2 separate occasions. I owned it once, played it, didn't like it, got rid of it. A couple of years later, I thought, I really got rid of that too soon. Got it back with, I think, a couple of expansions, played it again, thought to myself, no, I really didn't like this, got rid of it. And it's not because it's tactical. It's because it's the system of having to look up grid references. That whole system was so slow, and it takes so long for anything to happen. It's just too slow. That's the principal reason that it's in D tier. Respect to John Butterfield. Respect, it's an old design. I just think it's too dated. I think there's so many better systems. Yeah, for me, it hasn't aged well. So D tier for me. Andean Abyss, solid B tier. Put it directly alongside Cuba Libre in similarities. Maneuver, again, solid B tier, I think. Yeah, great gaming experiences. I mentioned I taught my daughter this game and she loved it. Thunderbolt Apache Leader. Okay, so this is the part of the Leader series, then a DVG. I think this is the best in the series that I've played. Now, granted, I haven't played that many, so there's a lot missing from here. Or there's a lot that I've played maybe once or twice, but not enough. So they're omitted. Like, I think I played Phantom Leader, Hornet Leader, but just not enough to really rank. But I think Thunderbolt Apache Leader was the best that I played, and I loved it. I played it a lot, and then just I put it on the shelf, and I thought I'm probably not going to return to this, and so sold it on. So for me, it didn't have a lot of replayability. I played through played it, thought it was a great system, and then sort of passed it on, and don't really regret it too much. But if you have a chance, I highly recommend checking out Thunderbolt Apache Leader. Yeah, great solitaire game design. Really cool to sort of like maneuver your aircraft through these valleys that you create for these scenarios. Really kind of evocative of those circumstances. Liberty or Death, solid BT coin. Not much more to say about that. U-Boot. Okay, I'm putting U-Boot D tier. I had such high hopes for this game. I was super excited to get U-Boot. U-Boot arrived. App facilitated game. And the bloody app kept crashing and it lost all our progress. So you'd be, navigating this submarine through challenging conditions for an hour and a half, and then the app crashes and there's no autosave option. So you just lost your game. And that was so incredibly frustrating. That's why this is going D tier. Great potential, and apparently they've cleaned up the app now, and I think I read that they've got an autosave option. Great. It's too late for me because I've already kind of been really frustrated. I taught friends how to play this. It took us hours to learn through and figure out, and everyone plays a different role on this ship, which is really cool. You've got this ship with sailors that move around, you've got navigational instruments that you use. Fascinating design, but the fact that the fundamental mechanism you need, the app, died and ruined our experiences meant that I will never return to this game. I'm sorry, not going to risk it again. Titan, an old classic that I don't see the appeal of. It's been a while since I played this. This is the most revised version from maybe about 10 years or so ago. What can I say about it? It reminds me of Talisman, just kind of moving around a map. You got a little combat board that you head to. Again, a game that feels just way too long and going around and around in circles. I can't remember too many details about it, to be honest. This is probably only just on the list, but I used to play it quite a lot, but haven't played it in a long time. That it's all just slipping out of my mind, out of my memory. All I remember is that I don't like it too much, despite having played a lot. Memoir 44. Yeah, look, I'm sorry. I'm putting this in the C tier. It's a game that I owned when it first came out, got rid of, recently reacquired to play with my son. He kind of likes it, but it's a lot of time to set up, a lot of randomness and chaos. I know the expansions add a bit more depth and sort of mitigate some of that chaos, but it's not as good as Commands and Colors, Napoleonics, etc. So it's going C tier, maybe just above Battlecry, but yeah, C tier for me. D-Day Dice, also C tier. I have this again to play with my son. You roll dice to perform actions. You use combinations of dice results, kind of like Yahtzee. Hey, look, I have a straight, kind of like that, but instead of numbers, you have symbols. So you use a red, white, and blue symbol to do certain things, or you use, a reinforcement symbol to add soldiers. You move into machine gun fire and you get mown down, all this kind of stuff. It's a light game involving dice rolling and luck. Nothing special. My son likes it, so I like to play with him, but it's just kind of a frustrating experience. Why? It's hard, really, because, very luck dependent. You got a lot of items you can buy, so you can buy like bazookas, you can promote officers, you can try to mitigate that luck as much as possible. Sometimes you just get terrible die rolls and there's nothing you can do. And there's not a lot of tactical decisions that you're making. You're basically advancing up the beach from section to section, buying the best thing you can buy. You're not making a lot of critical decisions. It's, just not a lot of fun, I don't think. Fields of Fire, where did I put this in my GMT ranking? I kind of want to say B tier. Again, recognizing huge potential, fantastic design. I frustrated with a lot of the luck, which I discussed in the GMT video, but that's a very, very personal thing. Hard to learn, and as I said in the other video, I recommend watching people's playthrough videos to figure out how to play it. Necromunda made the list. It's on the Wargame list, and look, I used to love this back in the 90s. I used to love the kind of campaigns. B tier. B tier. Basically, it's Warhammer 40k universe, the Underhive, you control a gang, you equip your gang and you go out fighting on missions. When you return from a mission, you take your wounded gang members and, if somebody's got a shot in the arm, you equip them with a bionic arm. They gain experience and they gain new weapons and you can use credits to buy new weapons. So it's got this cool kind of campaign element. That's what I always loved about it. And it's all a skirmish battle. So you set up your battlefield and you fight each other and you're looking at line of sight and all this kind of stuff. So almost imagine Warhammer 40,000 with only about half a dozen soldiers, gang members per side. It was always fun. The campaign element was what I most remember. Sword of Rome, I discussed in the GMT list. C tier, just a bit of an imbalanced card-driven game that goes for many, many hours. So the fact that it's imbalanced, if you're a bad faction, you can be really screwed over. And it's not a lot of fun for 5-6 hours of gameplay. RAF, the Battle of Britain. I'm going to put this S tier, just because it's a masterpiece in solitaire design. John Butterfield, right alongside D-Day in Omaha Beach. Brilliant. Look, it's not just solitaire, it's RAF solitaire, it's Luftwaffe solitaire, and it's a two-player game. So you've got 3 games in one with many different scenarios, and it's fascinating and really enjoyable and a brilliant game design. If you've never played RAF, there's a lot of great player guides as well. There's the RAF flip book, which is basically where you follow along, do this, now do this. Quite an easy game to learn. Risk. This is 2100 AD, I think. No, I have played this a couple of times. It's Risk with these quirky futuristic rules. Again, I think Risk is dated. This one I don't recall it adding enough to make it anything special, so that's going C tier. Pendragon, probably the most complicated of the coin games that I've played. One of the coin game that we've played the most, despite that, because we kept trying to play it again to figure out what's going on and what's going on. Yeah, B tier, really very thematic, probably the most thematic coin game, and also the most complex. Successes also. I'm going to put this a C tier. Why am I putting this C tier? Card-driven game, sort of post Alexander the Great. Yeah, it's solid. Probably C plus to be fair. But yeah, I don't have much to say about it, to be honest. Nothing really stands out as special about it. It is quite long. And I don't remember it really being too thematic. I haven't played second edition yet, of course. Normandy 44, 80. Great game of the Battle of Normandy. Mark Simonich design, 1940 X series. Yep, solid. Colonial Twilight, another solid 80 design coin series, but for 2 players. Check it out. The Russian Campaign, look, a great game, somewhat dated I think now. I'm putting this in the C tier. Hex Encounter, classic goodness. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of other things out there now that go above it, such as A Victory Lost. I'm going to put A Victory Lost in the B tier narrowly because it's very difficult to learn how to play as the Soviets. A lot of people complain that the game is imbalanced towards the Germans. I'm not convinced of that. I just think it's very difficult to learn to play as the Soviets. The Soviets really have to manipulate the breakdown system very carefully to slow down Barbarossa, and it's hard to do that without repeated plays. And it's a monster game, so how do you get repeated plays of a monster game to the point that you learn what to do? It's one of those things where, yeah, catch-22, you need to play this game 10 times to learn it, but each time it takes you a week to play through. So yeah, B tier. Holland 44, I have mentioned it's my least favourite of the 1940X series, so C2. Field Commander Napoleon, C tier. He's Rommel. I'm putting Rommel D tier. This was an improvement of Rommel, but both of these solitaire games, you take on the role of Rommel or Napoleon. I like I feel like it's been quite a while, almost a decade, I think, since I played this. But I feel like Napoleon added a bit more to the system. I haven't played Field Commander Alexander or Nimitz. I think there may be a few more as well. But both of these, Rommel in particular, fell quite flat. Napoleon was marginally better, and I played it a bit and then sold it on pretty quickly. Yeah. Breakout Normandy, I picked this up last year and tried to play it, had it set up, and just D tier. I know a lot of people love this. A lot of people say it's a classic game. Area movement, Normandy. It just didn't feel. It didn't strike. It didn't capture Normandy for me. Probably a good game there, but yeah, I just it didn't feel like Normandy. And as a game, I felt it was quite slow and not a lot of fun. That was me playing it solitaire. Maybe it works better as a 2-player game. So yeah, it's going DT for me, unfortunately. SPQR, straight up to AT, Great Battles of the Ancient World. Yep, super solid game. A lot of depth to it, a lot of scenarios that can play through. Warhammer Disc Wars is going DT. I think I've sold my copy, thankfully, at last. Because wow, we were disappointed by this. I used to play Warhammer. fantasy back in the 90s. And when this came out, I was like, oh, this is cool. I can buy one game and I get all these, these army units. I don't have to collect things. And it was just a very kind of bland experience of flipping cardboard across the table. And yeah, it wasn't much fun at all. The American Civil War, S tier. I've mentioned how wonderful this is, how it really captures the feel of the US Civil War in a fairly short playtime, very accessible and replayable, and yeah, great. Nevsky. Nevsky is part of the Levian campaign series. I've mentioned just yesterday that I think it's a wonderful series, and if I had a limitless wallet, I'd probably buy them all, but I feel that I'm glad I have it, and I would recommend the series. Yeah, what can I say? It's a great game. It's the only one that I've played in the series. Commands and Colors Ancients, A tier. As I mentioned yesterday, this got me started in this kind of, in wargaming, really. It was one of the first titles, and yeah, I dove right in. This is Horus Heresy. It's really hard to see through the image. And I picked this up for $40. It's now worth hundreds, and I picked it up for $40. Kind of played it a couple of times, liked it, sold it on to a friend, and then the price skyrocketed. But this is a really cool game with a kind of a three-dimensional map with like plastic inserts and stuff, based on the Warhammer 40k or 30k Horus Heresy event, where the Chaos Knights are landing around the capital, and there's this big sort of tactical battle. Had some really cool rules, which I think inspired the other title that I've forgotten by Fantasy Flight Games. Fantasy Flight Games had the IP for 40k, and they took some of the elements of this. Oh, it's been so long, I've kind of forgotten the details. But yeah, I just recall really interesting tactical. I think it also borrowed some elements from the Game of Thrones board game, with like hidden orders that sort of stack up and you don't quite know what's going to happen in a region. But yeah, I remember it being a lot of fun. Never had a bad experience with it. Solid B tier. And I just had a friend who was a huge 40k fan and loved it, so I kind of sold it to him and regret it. This is Dos de Mayo. This is based on the 2nd of May rebellion in Madrid, 1806, I want to say. Spanish rebellion against French troops. I'm putting this 8 here because this is fantastic every time I play it. I play this with my son and daughter. I play it with friends. It's a light little tactical game using a tiny little map and cubes on a map of Madrid with event cards that come out. You move your cubes around the map. If you're the Spanish, you kind of are a mob. If you're the French, you control sort of small army detachments that kind of block the streets and so forth. It's brilliant. It's such a great game. 80. If you get a copy of this, check it out because it should be pretty cheap. It's not a big game. It's a small little box game. We're fast playing, half an hour, and I would love to see more games like this. Small. It's just a brilliant design. Dos de Mayo. Who designed this? 2008 it came out. Daniel Val. What else has? Only a 6.9 rating. That's not fair. 2.17 weight. He hasn't designed much. That, an expansion, and Tatahuegos. Look, try and get a copy if you can of Dos de Mayo. It's so cheap, $14 in the US market, and just a really nice game that you can pull out and play as a filler. So yeah, here's an example of a light game that I'm ranking very highly. Rommel in the Desert, another great block game. So I talk about my block game bias. This is one of the best. I'm going to put this. A tier. Rommel in the Desert. I don't have it anymore, unfortunately. Another game that I found hard to get to the table, and regrettably sold on. No, I'm sorry. BT Rommel. Sorry, just pulling you down a bit. One of the best block games. North Africa campaign. Great supply element as well. A lot of fun. Haven't played it in a long time. Warriors of God. C tier for me. Why? Never really captured the theme. You know, an interesting game, but it didn't. It just didn't feel historically thematic for me. A lot of people love it. I'm pretty sure it inspired another title, Warriors of God. Re-implements. What has it inspired? Warriors of Japan. I'm sure there's more as well. Adam Starkweather. That's right. Adam was involved in it. And Warriors of God. What's the other title that he developed? Is it Samurai Lords? I want to say. I could be wrong. Warriors of America. This could be the one I'm thinking of. It looks somewhat similar. But look, yeah, for me, I just never really enjoyed it. Didn't feel like it was representative of the conflict of the time. I'm not a huge fan of that historical era generally. The wars of France and England, 14th, 15th century. So yeah, it's a CT for me. No surprises. Ardennes 44. S tier, one of my favourite games. The best of Signature's 1940X series. Barbarossa to Berlin. Solid card-driven game. Behind Paths of Glory. Falls a fair way behind, but if you really like the Second World War, this is a great card-driven game. If you're interested in the Second World War, and if you like card-driven games, check out Barbarossa to Berlin. Atlantic Chase. S tier, wonderfully innovative design by Jeremy White. Great to learn, many different diverse scenarios, and a lot of fun, both solo. I actually haven't played it with an opponent, but I'm sure it would be fun with an opponent as well. Rise and Decline of the Third Reich. I'm going to put this A tier, because I think it's a classic. And I've mentioned, my World at War video, that my fond memories of playing this inspired me to pick up a World at War, and I was kind of disappointed by the complexity of a World at War. A World at War? Yes. Because, Rise and Decline of the Third Reich, a complex game, but is A too high? A might be too high. I'll put it B+, okay? It's just going to fall out of A tier, because it's not, yeah, okay, B+ for Rise and Decline of the Third Reich. So many copies on the market. Very easy to pick up secondhand in Australia, at least. Or at least it used to be. There are always copies going around. Rise and Decline of the Third Reich. Let's see the market. Shopping. Yeah, there's a few going around. Overview. See all. There's got to be some Australian copies here, right? For around 40, 50 bucks. All American, okay. Pretty cheap in America. You can get a copy for $15. $15. $115. I don't know what's so special about that one. But anyway, yeah, solid game design. Somewhat dated. But like I said, last year I thought I wouldn't mind playing that again. And I thought a World at War would be similar, but they've just added too much to it. Pericles. Part of the, what do they call them? Great Statesman series. Mark Herman. B tier. The Ardennes. Sorry, what's the... I've forgotten the full title. Enemy Action Ardennes. Excuse me. A tier. Almost S tier. Why is it not S tier? It's a wonderfully innovative battlefield design. Again, you're getting 3 games in one. You're getting the Solitaire Allies, Solitaire German, and a 2-player game. It falls short because... not because it's so bloody hard. The AI is brutal. Can be prone to swings of luck. Just when I think a lot of it comes down to luck. You've got to get lucky not to get those reinforcements in the right place. And you know that. When you're drawing cards, it's like, please no reinforcements, sigh of relief. Please no reinforcements, sigh of relief. And the fact that you know that, and when you get bad luck, it's like, oh, I got unlucky here, I got unlucky there. It feels like some games It doesn't matter what you do, you're just going to lose. Which is different to kind of, you don't have that feeling with these two games. With D-Day at Omaha Beach and RAF, yeah, there is that swing of luck, but kind of feels like you have control. With Ardennes Offensive, you don't feel like you have control. It's like, yes, I've broken through, and then suddenly, boom, a wave of American reinforcements in front of you. Combat Commander Europe, DT for the same reason that I've explained with Pacific. Richard III, War of the Roses. Look, do you want to C or D tier? Again, my bias against block games. Have played this quite a lot. And again, it just didn't quite feel thematic for the period. I think Crown of Roses, which I talked about, is a more thematic, much more thematic game. It's much more detailed as well. But I'm sure I saw Kingmaker. So he's Kingmaker. I think Kingmaker's a more thematic game. But I'm putting Kingmaker on the same level for the bloody plague rules and the chaos and randomness associated with it. It is quite dated. I know there's a new version to come out this year, or it's about to come out, of Kingmaker. Anyway. All right, the Napoleonic Wars. C tier as well. Solid card-driven game. That is hard to get to the table. Requires, I think, similar reasons to Here I Stand. But what's the issue here? I can't remember what I said yesterday in the video about this. Just not as, it doesn't quite feel as, I don't know what it is about Napoleon Wars. I'd rather play Here I Stand, I think. Maybe I need to play it more, but it's staying in the CT for now, just for being a little less special than those others. There it is. That's Bonaparte at Marengo. Here are the two outstanding titles. Both incidentally feel very different. Bonaparte Marengo feels more like an abstract game of chess where you're moving your armies around, you got to block and then move around, outmaneuver. There's a lot of maneuvering of pieces to outmaneuver and try and flank. In Napoleon's Triumph, it's more movement of large forces and trying to surprise your opponent by bringing large forces to bear without them knowing or expecting what you're doing. So one's about sort of careful movement of your strong forces. The other is about sort of careful tactical maneuvering and trying to outmaneuver your opponent on the battlefield rapidly, using cavalry in particular. But two, similar game design, similar systems, they look very similar, but they actually play quite differently. This is Zulu's Rorke's Drift, part of the what's it called? Zulu Rorke's Drift. Is it called Zulu? States of Siege system. Look, there it was. I'm sure I saw it. Zulu's on the ramparts. That's it. And that's the cover. Part of the old, designed by Tim Allen. Oh no, Joseph Miranda. Sorry. Art by Tim Allen and Alec Emmerich. It has seen many versions over the years. Here's the old version from 2009. States of Siege. It's a light solitaire system. It's decent. It's very random and chaotic. And again, it kind of feels like one of those games where you're doing stuff, but you don't feel like you have a lot of control over victory or defeat. It feels like you're just kind of like you're going through the motions, and don't have a lot of agency. The East Front series I've grouped into one. Hard to see the title here, but it's East Front. Another great, probably one of the more complex block games. You can combine this with West Front and I think Med Front. One of the more complex, deeper, quite more complex block games covering the Eastern Front. I'd put it B-. Okay, so it's just sitting above CT for me. Hill 218. Probably many of you have probably never heard of this before. It's a very simple little card game, but it's going in a solid B tier just because it's so quick and easy to play. Hill 218. It's been a long time since I played this. The Battlefield Hill 218, technically. 6.6 rating, 1.71. There's been a few rethemes. Yeah, it looks like this. You've got Hill 218, and you're kind of laying out your forces around the hill to attack your opponent's cards. It's almost... what can I describe it as? If you've ever played a game called Hive, it almost feels like that, where you're building out your hive of insects and moving them around. You know, you've got this tactical grid of cards coming out. You know, in this example here, your tank can attack orthogonally, your heavy weapons can attack diagonally, your artillery can attack at range, this kind of thing. And you're constantly trying to battle your opponent and destroy their pieces. And I think you're trying to surround Hill 218 from memory or something like that. But yeah, it was solid, a lot of fun, played really quick, lightweight, a single deck of cards. B tier. And lastly, the 100th game is Caesar and Rome versus Gaul. And I've said it before, this is A tier. I think it's better than Hannibal, so it's kind of an A plus for me. But yeah, a lot of fun, wonderful game design. You should check that out. So folks, a lot of contentious decisions there, I'm sure. I know I wavered with a few of these between sort of A and B. I think I've got a good spread there of games. Here's my S tier: War of the Ring, Battle of the Five Armies, Paths of Glory, D-Day at Omaha Beach. I haven't played any of the other D-Day titles, and I don't think any of them were ranked in the top 200. RAF, the Battle of Britain. This is the most recent box cover. I've got the edition from about 10, 12 years ago. Simmons's Napoleon's Triumph and Bonaparte at Marengo. Brilliant games. GMT's US Civil War, Ardennes 44, and Atlantic Chase. You'll notice there's been a lot of overlap with GMT games, you know, from my GMT games tier list. These are, there are more, but these are the 100 games from Board Game Geek's top 230 that I'm most familiar with. There's a few other games that I may have played once or twice, but I didn't feel confident ranking. It's been, you know, in some cases, like I said, I used to play Titan quite a lot, and it's been at least 10 years, so I've kind of forgotten a lot of the details, but my memory is not really enjoying it too much, despite playing it a lot. Anyway, folks, that is my ranking of the top 200 war games on Board Game Geek. I will create the link to this tier in the description, so you're welcome to take that and create your own, or jump on Board Game Geek. You just save the images and upload it to your own tier. I'd be very keen to hear what other people create with these tiers. Thanks everyone, and take care.